for the amazing work they're doing in spreading Torah around the globe. You know, right now, people are able to watch this lecture, and people are in Australia, in South Africa, China, India. Somebody came up to me recently and said that they asked me my name, and I introduced myself, and they said they saw my lecture on the Hebrew language in Denver. They used it for Malava Malka in Denver. So I asked them, how'd you like it? They said they liked it. I was so happy. But TorahAnyTime.org is spreading Torah all over the world. And we're very, the amazing work. And if that's not a sign of the coming of Mashiach, I don't know what is. That the whole world is able to hear Torah. It's an amazing, amazing thing. Okay, everybody. So, we're getting close to the holiday of Shavuos. Shavuos is coming, we know, this week. And what is Shavuos? Shavuos is the receiving of the Torah at Har Sinai. This was the day in Jewish history when the entire Jewish people went to the Har Sinai, the mountain of Sinai. We stood there and we received Hashem's Torah. That's an amazing thing. The entire Jewish people, the whole Jewish nation. Now, this is the core of everything we believe, is the fact that we have a relative who was there when God introduced Himself. This is an amazing thing, and this is what I want to get into tonight a little bit. You know, something must have happened there that was so phenomenal that has impacted Jewish generations for the last 3,300 something years. Why? You know, we look around. You know, number one, we've been scattered around the globe since the destruction of the Second Temple 2,000 years ago. My family comes from Germany. My father's from Germany. Many people here, the families are from Bukhara, places like that, Samarkand, Uzbekistan, places, Tashkent, wherever we are over there. And there are differences between us. Let's be real, there are differences. You know, there are differences in Pesach, right? You know, I don't eat rice, you eat rice. True? You know, I go to the weddings of my students. I've been to many of my students' weddings, and God willing, we go to everybody's wedding here. It's not yet married. Amen, Miss Hashem. And it's different. The food's different. It's very different. You know, and I'm embarrassingly in love with the food, as everybody knows. I mean, I'm not proud, but I am. I can't help it. I sit at the table and I eat, and everybody's dancing, and I'm eating. It's just, I'm embarrassed, but I can't help it. It's you know, what can I do? I'm not used to it, and I'm so like amazed by it. We dance, you know, we don't dance the same. We don't dance the same. Our dances are different. You know, I grew up, we dance, we form a circle, and we hold hands, and we dance. My first time I went to a wedding of one of my students a number of years back, and you know, it was Bukhari wedding. The hands, boom, 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 dancing around. And I tried to hold the guy's head next to me. Pulls it away. He wants to dance like that. You know, we dance differently. We do. You know, we Ashkenazim, we try to dance like you. We look ridiculous. You know? I mean, the biggest compliment I've ever gotten was one time someone came up to me, one of my students said to me at a wedding, I think, he said, Rabbi Kraft, are you Bukharian? And I said, no. I said, why? He said, you dance so well. And I was so complimented. You know, it's such the biggest compliment I ever got. But we dance so differently, you know. I mean, there's so many differences. It's like, you know, sometimes I like to watch, sometimes I've seen a few cases with my students, like the girl is Bukharian and the boy is Ashkenaz. I've seen a few cases like that where he's in yeshiva, one of the yeshivas. So the yeshiva guys come to the wedding, you know. And so I know what the band does. That band, that 10-piece band, the boom, you know, whatever. First they play the Ashkenazic music, but they play it so fast, you know, like, you know. And then I'm always just watching. I sat back. I want to watch now, because I know these guys. As soon as they switch to the Bukharian beat, you know, I want to see what the guys are going to do. And I always love watching because they're shocked, like, what is going on over here? Like, you know, and then they try to do it, and I think, oh, you look so ridiculous. Let my students dance. They'll teach you better. They dance much better than you, you know. But we dance differently. We have difference in our cultures. But you know what? 99.9% of what we do is exactly the same. The Torah that we have been transmitting for the last 3,000 years, no matter where we've been around the planet, has been the exact same Torah. Exactly. And it's so phenomenal how much we have in common. So we have a few little differences, cultural differences. But it's the Torah which matters. And we have the exact same Torah. And here's my family has been in Germany for, I don't know, over 1,000 years. Your families maybe have been in the other part of the planet over there, in Uzbekistan, Samarkand, whatever it was. I didn't even know about you. I didn't know about you. For many years, I remember in the 70s, so it was very big in America amongst American Jews, college students, that we were very involved in Russian Jewry, getting the Russian Jews out of Russia, bringing down the Iron Curtain. We had protests, and we used to go to the UN and places like this, and marches. It was a big thing I was involved, we were all involved. And in our minds, who were those Jews we were talking about? They were the Jews in Moscow, right? The Jews in the form of what used to be, Leningrad, St. Petersburg. No. And then all of a sudden in the 90s, I start meeting Jews from Bukhara. And I'm embarrassed to say, I didn't know about you. Now I'm so happy I discovered you. I'm very happy. Hope you're happy you discovered me. I'm happy I discovered you. But we've been separated different parts of the planet for over 2,000 years. Do you realize that? Do you think about that a little bit? Do you feel that? What that means? And we have differences, but we should have so many more differences. And we don't. We look at our Torah, and our Torah is exactly the same. Now, I want to show you something that one night I couldn't sleep. So I decided to count the letters in the Torah. And I discovered that there are 304,805 letters in our Torah. 304,805 letters, which is 79,000 words. Okay? That's a lot of letters. 304,805. Now, in 1948, when the State of Israel was established, and we started gathering Jews, the Arba Kanfos Haaretz from all over the planet, and we started coming back to Israel, to Eretz Yisrael, to Yerushalayim. So one thing that we did, and very interestingly so, we wanted to compare each other's Torah. Are those 304,805 letters the same? And guess what? We compared all of our Torahs. The Torah from Uzbekistan with the Torah from Poland. Right? The Torah from Morocco with the Torah in France. Right? The Torah from Egypt with the Torah from Moscow. We compared all the Torahs. And guess what? We found that our Torahs were exactly the same to the letter, 304,805 letters, except the Jews in Yemen. The Jews who lived in Yemen. Yemen was a little country on the tip of Saudi Arabia. And they were, because where they're located, the proximity geographically, they were isolated, more isolated than other parts of Jewry, very difficult to cross through the Saudi Arabian desert and into other places. So they were a very separate community. We found that in their Torah, there were 9 differences than in the Torahs of Jews in any part of the world. 9 differences. So I did a little research, and I'd like to just show you what the differences were. One difference was, in Genesis, was the Vav in Minosh. Minosh has a Vav. The Vav was split. Another difference, the Vav in Ma'anos, also in Bereshis, Genesis, the Vav was split. Another difference, the Vav in Vayechi, the Vav was split. Oh, big difference, big difference. Instead of the Vav being full length, there was a little crack in the Vav.
Like you.
What?
Like you.
But the same length, just a little space, that's all. But it was a Vav, just had a little space. Does it affect the meaning of the word? No. Does it affect the pronunciation of the word? No. Does it affect anything? No. But they had a little space. Okay, that's 3 of them. The next was the Yud of Ta'aseh. Okay. One letter was missing. There was a Yud that was not in one word. There was an extra Vav in the word Ephod. In the word Dakah, there was an Aleph instead of a Hey. Sounds the same. Aleph and Hey are interchangeable in sound, but they're different letters. Different Aleph instead of the Hey. There was a Vav in the word Bisomos. There was a Yud in the word Chod Shechem in Numbers 10:10. And there was another Vav in Bor. The word Bor, you could spell it with a Vav, without a Vav, they spell it with a Vav. So they have 9 differences. Out of 304,805 letters, they had 9 differences. 3 of them were basically meaningless. And the other 6 did not affect the meaning, nor did they affect the pronunciation. And they were just variant spellings of the same word. Now, okay, you're not so impressed. I don't see anybody's being so impressed here. Yeah.
Why did they have the crack in their club?
The truth of it is, Rashi talks about it. There are two different traditions how you should write it. You're supposed to write it full or with a crack for some reason. Sometimes different letters are like that in the Torah for different philosophical reasons. There's big nuns in some places. There's small letters in some places. Things are written in certain ways for very philosophical reasons, spiritual reasons. I don't know the exact reason. Okay, but it doesn't. No one's impressed. Let me see if I can impress you just a little bit. We're going to impress you just with a little bit of comparative religion.
We're speechless.
You're speechless. You're speechless. You're not impressed. Let me impress you. The reason you're not impressed is because you have nothing to compare it to. Let me give you some basis for comparison. Now, I don't mean to knock other religions. That's not my purpose here tonight. Well, maybe it is. Maybe it is. But it's not my intent, my explicit purpose. But it will happen. Let's take a look at the Christian Bible. The Christian New Testament. They call it the New Testament. Why do they call it the New Testament? Because they hold approximately 1,800 years ago, there was a new prophet named Jesus, Yeshua, Jesus, whatever you want to call him, and he therefore introduced a new covenant. A new covenant was made with his followers. You no longer have to believe in the Torah, now you have to believe in him. A New Testament was written, and they have two documents. They have what we call the Old Testament, which is our Bible, our Torah, and they have what they call the New Testament, the New Covenant. That's what the Christians believe is their holy work. Now, let me read to you a statement from a Christian apologist, Josh McDowell. What's an apologist? An apologist is a defender. Someone who wants to defend Christianity is called an apologist. He's a Christian apologist. It doesn't mean somebody walks around all day saying he's sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Excuse me. So sorry, that was my fault. That's not an apologist. An apologist is a defender of Christianity. He's defending Christianity. Listen to what he says. He says like this: to think that the 200,000 variant readings of the New Testament are a problem, don't think so. Did you hear the number I just said? 200,000 variant readings, different readings. They have 200,000 different texts as to what the real text is supposed to be. But he's trying to defend it because he says it's not such a real problem. Why? Because it represents, and only in 400 of these 200,000 places does it cause doubt about the textual meaning. Doubt about the textual meaning. And only 50 of these 400 are of great theological significance. Do you hear that? Now, the reason it's interesting is the New Testament is... No, he's a Christian defender. He's trying to defend the New Testament. He's trying to say the 200,000 variant readings they have aren't such a problem, because it's only in 400 places does it affect the actual meaning of the text, and only 50 of those will alter your theology, meaning your understanding about God. So he's trying to defend Christianity. That's what he's saying. Now, you know why that's amazing? Because you think about it, the New Testament is, in terms of time, our Torah was given how many years ago? 3,318 years ago, approximately. The New Testament was given when? Or that we came into being about maybe 1,500 years ago. It's less than half the age of the Torah. And they have 200,000 mistakes. Not only that, it's 1/3 the size of the Torah. And they have 200,000 mistakes. Do you hear what's going on? And not only that, for at least the last 1,000 years, they've had a central authority in Rome. If a person comes and they want to change something in the New Testament, do you think they could get away with it? They couldn't. What would happen to such a person who might have tried that 1,000 years ago? Maybe he'd be burnt at the stake, or something worse than that. Right? It happened. They've had a central authority to enforce it. Have we Jews had a central authority for the last 2,000 years? No.
We're scattered.
Absolutely, been scattered around the world. We've been in exile. We've been persecuted. We've been on the run. And yet we come back together after 2,000 years. We look at our Sifrei Torah, and we find only, just the Yemenites have 9 mistakes, 3 of them which are meaningless. It's phenomenal. It defies statistics. You think about it. And what does that mean we don't have a central authority? It means that, if any Jew said to themselves, look, I want to just change, just take something out of the Torah, can we stop him? Will we be able to stop it? For example, I'm embarrassed to say, but there's a synagogue down in Greenwich Village called Simchat Torah. And this is a place that, put it this way, the Rebbitzin might be another man. And supposing they wanted to say, look, that very offensive verse in the Torah which says that such action is abomination, supposing they came along and say, hey, let's just erase that. Let's wipe that out. Let's scrape it out. Is there anybody, can we stop them? No. We can't. We have no authority. We can't do that. We have no central authority, yet we've kept the accuracy of our Torah to the T around the world. Around the world. This is amazing. Now, I think what we have to understand is, how did this occur? It must have meant that something happened when the Torah was given at the mountain of Sinai 3,318 years ago that made such an impression on the people who stood there that they understood that this has to be transmitted with complete accuracy. Complete accuracy. Something must have happened 3,300 years ago that had such an effect that no one had any doubt that this was the living word of the Almighty, and has to be communicated with detail. And that's, of course, what we do believe. And that's why, by the way, as Jews, we're always looking back. We're always looking back to that original point where it all began. As Jews, our measuring stick of truth is not what will be in the future. It's always what happened in the past. This is what I mean. If you look in the world today, you see about 1 billion Christians. You see about 1 billion Muslims, 1.5 billion maybe. And how many Jews do we see? 12 million. 12 to 13 million Jews. That's it. We are a very small nation. The tops, the largest we've ever been historically, was approximately 18 million. You know when that was? That was approximately 1940. By 1945, we were 12 million. And we haven't really risen above those numbers since. That's all we are. That's all we are. We're a very small people. But you know what? How can we claim that we have the truth, that we have the word of the living God, when we're such a small number? How can we make that claim? Surely the billion Christians could say, look at us, we're a billion. Billion to 12 million. 1.5 billion Muslims to 12 million. Right? These are huge differences in numbers. Huge differences. So how do we make the claim that we have the truth? So as Jews, it doesn't matter how many people there are today. Everything matters as to how many people there were at the beginning of the line. It means like this. The famous metaphor that's always stated is that imagine you're on a picnic in the forest. And you're in a forest, you're having a wonderful time, you're having a picnic, you have your barbecue going, tashlich, you're cooking up your shish kebabs. And all of a sudden, somebody yells, lion. There's a lion in the forest. So you start running out of the forest. As you run out of the forest, you reach a fork in the road. You can either go to the right, or you can go to the left. You notice that 995 people run to the right. 5 people run to the left. Which direction do you go? What? With the majority. You go after the majority. No. If you see 995 people moving to the right and 5 to the left, if a person has any intelligence, it must be the 995, no more than the 5. And in fact, that's how we do decide Jewish law, by the way. Don't get me wrong. Jewish law majority is very important as you learn the fellowship, right? For example, if there are 10 butcher shops in the town, 9 of them are kosher, and 1 of them is non-kosher, and I find a piece of meat in the public square, can I eat that piece of meat? 9 butcher shops are kosher, 1 is not kosher. Can I eat the piece of meat? Yes, I can. Go after the majority. The majority said it came from the kosher butcher store. I can eat it. We take majority very seriously in Jewish law. That's why one time there was a famous case that Rabbi Akiva Eger used to have this priest that he used to debate with. And the priest said to him, Rabbi, I know your Torah a little bit, and in Torah, you always go after the majority, don't you? So Rabbi Akiva said, yes. So this priest said to Rabbi Akiva Eger, he said to him, look, if you go after the majority, who is the majority? The billion Christians? Or the 12 million Jews? Who's the majority? got to go with us. So Rabbi Akiva was a very wise Jew. He said back to me, he said, you only go after majority when you have a doubt. We have no doubt. Now let's think how this works. So there you are in the forest. You see 995 people run to the right, 5 people run to the left. Go after the majority. That's Jewish law. Go with the majority.
What if you don't have a doubt and you know which way to go?
Well, you have a doubt. I don't know. Which way do I go? I have a line after me. Which way do I move? So if we're intelligent, we go to the right with 995. But suppose you look at those 995, and what do you see? You see that they're actually the school of the blind. They're having a picnic in the forest. And in fact, they're all walking out of the forest with their hand on the shoulder of the person in front of them. And there's only one person at the head of the line who has vision, who has sight. Now, is it a question of 995 to 5? Or is it a question of 5 to 1? It doesn't matter how many people there are at the end of the line. What matters is how many people are there at the beginning of the line. That's everything. In Judaism, we're always looking back. Look back to that original point, the revelation at Har Sinai. How many people did we have there? And we're going to talk about it. Witnesses. How many witnesses? 3 million witnesses. All of our grandparents. And hopefully tonight we're going to verify that that's a truthful event. But we're talking about 3 million witnesses at the beginning of the line. Now, do you hear just that claim itself? The claim that we have, that there are 3 million witnesses who witnessed God reveal himself. That itself is the Jewish claim that every Jew stood at Har Sinai. Every Jew was exposed to God as God said, Anochi Hashem Lochecha. In fact, the neshamas burst out of the body to such an extent that the Jewish people died, and God had to revive them. God then said the next commandment, we died again. And after that, he said to Moshe, okay, you healed the other 8 yourself, we've heard enough. But we experienced it. And not only that, we experienced God 40 years in the desert. But this is something we call national revelation. The whole Jewish people experience it. And that's our claim. Our claim is that everybody who was there experienced it. You know, we have a lot of people, here. A lot of people in different professions. Some of you are making a lot of money, like Natan over here. Some of you aren't making as much money. But if you want to make a lot of money, you know what you should do? Start a religion. Because religion is big money.
You're a millionaire, huh?
Just turn on.
You didn't start the religion.
I didn't start the religion. I didn't start the religion.
You're one of the captains.
I'm just doing my job. But if you want to start a religion, turn on any, these evangelical stations. And what do you see? People give money. It's big money. And there have been 15,000 religions in the last 3,000 years. Now let me say something that's very interesting.
And the one main?
What's that? What?
Which is the main?
Let's see.
The main.
Of those 15,000 religions, if you want to start your own religion, and you want people to believe you, let me ask you a question. What's a more powerful claim? That God came to you one night, you had a vision, and God spoke to you, and told you therefore to spread his gospel to all of humanity. And therefore you start a religion. Is that a more powerful claim, or is the following more powerful? Remember the time how God came to all of you as we were sitting at Beit Gavriel, and God told all of you to listen to Rabbi Kraft as his prophet. Which is the more powerful claim? The second one, correct? Obviously. Second one. That's it. You got it right, sir. Sorry, I guess a little slack because she works for us. First, second, it doesn't matter. Whatever you say, it's right. But we obviously understand that. So I have a question. How come no other religion in the last 3,000 years has ever dared use that claim? Think about it. Let's just analyze. Let's do a little bit of analysis. We call it comparative religion. Comparative religion. They say that Yasser Arafat, when he died, so Mak Shemo, he went up to heaven, and I guess briefly, and God asked him a question and said to him, Yasser, who is there that you'd like to meet? Is there somebody in history that you would like to meet? So who did he say? He said, Muhammad, I'd like to meet Muhammad. Oh, let me meet Muhammad. Muhammad. So God said, okay, just open that door over there. So he opens the door. He sees this tall man, beautiful, beautiful beard, glowing countenance, long white flowing robe, just elegant and beautiful. He says to him, Muhammad? He says, no, Moshe. Moshe?
Very close.
Moshe, I'm so sorry. Moshe, I'm so sorry. Stay. Oh, Moshe, please, it's okay. It's okay. I'm so sorry what I did to your people. It's okay. Please, stay. You're here, you're my guest. Coffee or tea? No, please, Moshe, it does nothing. Coffee or tea? No, Moshe, please, no. Yasser, you're here.
Yes.
You're my guest. Coffee or tea? Okay, tea. Tea? Muhammad, tea. That's a joke you will not hear in your comparative religion class at St. John's. Maybe edit that. We'll take that off the tape when we go.
That's all right.
Let's look at Christianity for a second. What's the Christian claim? The Christian claim is that Jesus performed many miracles, and these miracles demonstrate that he was God's prophet. Part of his claim. Question: how many witnesses did he claim saw him perform these miracles?
His donkey.
How many witnesses did they claim? They claim very few. How many witnesses were there when he turned one loaf into many loaf, when he walked on the water? How many witnesses did they claim? They don't claim many witnesses. They don't claim any witnesses. So why do you have 1.5 billion Christians who believe it? Because they have faith. They have faith that, look, if my father told me that, he wouldn't lie. But all the father is saying, when a Christian boy turns to his father and says, Dad, tell me about Jesus walking on the water, how many people witnessed it? You know what his father will say? Well, I don't know if anybody witnessed it, but that's what we believe. They don't claim witnesses. They also have Muhammad. According to the Quran, Muhammad, how did he die? Well, if he's going to die, he can't have a natural death. He ascended at the point of the Dome of the Rock. That's where the Temple Mount is today in Jerusalem, above the temple. He ascended, they claim, on his donkey Barak, and he flew into heaven. How many witnesses does the Quran claim were there? How many witnesses does the Quran claim besides the donkey? None. So why do you have 1 billion Muslims who believe it? And when a Muslim father tells his son, listen, isn't that how Muhammad died? I'll tell you, Muhammad didn't die. He ascended from his donkey Barak on the Temple Mount into heaven. So all his father is saying is, I have faith that's the way it happened. But I'm not telling you anything about witnesses. What do we say as Jews? Our claim is there were 3 million grandmas and grandpas, your grandparents, my grandparents, all who received divine revelation, prophecy, all who stood at Har Sinai, 3 million witnesses. Now, if you think about it, this is the most powerful way to start a religion, is it not? So why don't any of the 15,000 other religions use this claim as the point of origin, as the beginning of the religion? Why don't they use it? You know why they don't use it? Because you can't use it unless it's true. I could say something happened to me, and I might have the charisma to convince a few of you, but the rest of you will look at me like I'm nuts. True? I could say that on my way to giving this class tonight, I got out of my car, and a flying saucer landed right there in the middle of 108th Street, and they brought me up into their spacecraft, and they spray painted me green, and they flew me all over Forest Hills. And I looked down at the entire community here, and while I was there, they gave me a book, and they told me to come out to teach it to you, and I'm to be a prophet. And the first thing it says is to donate a big part of your salary to me. I can say that to you. And a few of you might believe me. But a few of you will be very skeptical. And you'll say, Rabbi Kraft, that's very wonderful, it's very nice. But that happened to you, not to us. But if I come here and I say to you, remember what happened as we were all waiting for this class to begin? Remember how we were over in the front of the synagogue eating sushi? And these Martians came in, they spray painted all of you green. And they took all of you up into a flying saucer. And together we all flew over Forest Hills. And in front of all of you, they told you that I'm to be your leader. I can't make such a claim if that claim is false, can I?
No.
I can't claim you experienced something unless you experienced it. I can claim I experienced something and try to convince you. But you can only claim you experienced something if you were really there. I'd have to be crazy to make such a claim. That's the Jewish claim. The Jewish claim is that there were 3 million witnesses who stood at Har Sinai. And Moshe Rabbeinu reminds us again and again. Remember how you stood at Har Sinai. Remember how God spoke to all of you. Don't forget. Lo tishkach. Teach it to your children. He got it to Levincha. Say it to your children. Remember it over and over and over again. Remember what happened to all of you. That's a very interesting claim. And I'll tell you something very interesting. There has been nobody in the last 3,318 years who have denied that claim. It's the basis of Christianity. Every Christian believes that. They all believe that God spoke to the entire Jewish people at Har Sinai. That's an axiom. But, about 1,800 years ago, Jesus became the new prophet, and his word supersedes what happened 3,318 years ago. Jews, follow me. You know what we Jews said? We said, wait a minute. That's ridiculous. Why? If God gave us his word and his mitzvot in front of 3 million witnesses, if he wants to undo it, he also has to undo it in front of witnesses, doesn't he? He can't undo it in front of one person. And that was a Jewish argument against Christianity. Where are your witnesses? If we were the witnesses 3,000 years ago, then it was 2,000 years ago. If God wants to change his mind, he also has to do it in front of witnesses. Because that's the most perfect way of communicating. Witnesses. Isn't that true? And that's why very few Jews followed Christianity. Because they didn't have witnesses. In Islam, Muslims, we have 1.5 billion Muslims. You know what? Those 1.5 billion Muslims all believe that God spoke to the entire Jewish people at Har Sinai. They have no problem with that. No problem whatsoever. But with the coming of Muhammad, he is now the new prophet, and now his word overrides what happened at the mountain of Sinai. That's all. And Jews now listen to the new prophet. So we turn back to them, of course, and say the same thing. If God gave his Torah in front of 3 million witnesses, if he wants to undo it, he also has to undo it in front of 3 million witnesses. He can't undo it in front of one person. That's not fair. That's not the way God communicates. So everyone agrees with our claim, and has never been denied for the last 3,000 years. Did you know that? Every group and religion around the world has agreed that God spoke to the Jewish people at Har Sinai, 3 million witnesses. You know, in fact, if you look at the definition of being a Jew, it's really 4 things. It's belief in God. It's belief that God spoke to the entire Jewish people at Har Sinai. It's the belief that there's an oral law. And it's the belief that it cannot be changed. That has been the 4 pillars of Judaism. When you've changed one of those pillars, you've walked away from Judaism. Now look at it. Let's go back in history a little bit. There was a group around the time of the Second Temple called the Sadducees, Sadducees. Did they believe in God? Absolutely. Did they believe that God gave the Torah at Har Sinai? Absolutely. Did they believe in the oral Torah fully? No. What happened to Sadducees? They didn't fully believe in the oral Torah like we believe in it. What happened to them? Disappeared. Christianity, did they believe in God? Absolutely. Did they believe that God gave the Torah at Har Sinai? Absolutely. Did they believe in the oral Torah? Not so clear. Did they believe that can be changed? Yes. Not Jews. Muslims, did they believe in God? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll kill you if you don't believe in God, right? They never believe in God. They're very monotheistic. Extremely monotheistic. You know, you could go to a Muslim mosque and daven mincha. Do you know that? Yeah. You could daven mincha. They're extremely monotheistic. I mean, maybe do it quietly. Maybe it's not so, you know. But it's you can't do that in a Christian church. It's forbidden to go to a Christian church. But you go to a Muslim mosque. They're very monotheistic. Do they believe that God gave the Torah at Har Sinai? Absolutely. Do they believe in the oral Torah? No. Do they believe it could be changed? Yes. I'll tell you something. I'm sad to say this, and there's only been one group in the history of the world since the giving of the Torah 3,318 years ago that has denied almost all 4 pillars of what it means to be a Jew. You know what that group is? I'm very embarrassed to say it, but it's our own brethren. There's a movement called Reform Judaism. They've denied almost all 4 pillars.
So why do they call themselves Jews?
It's a very good question you're asking. In fact, someone wrote an article one time that one could probably take them to a court of law in America and sue them for misappropriating the name Judaism. That was a funny article, but he meant it somewhat seriously. You can't call them Jews. Nice people. A Jew is a Jew. Believe me, a Jew is a Jew. A Jew means you're born from a Jewish mother. That's it. But you can't claim you're a legitimate expression of Judaism if you change all 4 pillars. You've got to bring them back. And that's our job. We're trying to bring all Jews back. We love all Jews. We want to bring Jews back. The Jewish people is going to be here for eternity. We're going to be here until Mashiach comes. No question about it. What?
What do you mean by 4 pillars?
These are always the 4 definitions. When you change one of these definitions, you've moved away from what Judaism is. That's belief in God, belief that God gave the Torah at the mountain of Sinai, belief in the oral Torah, and belief that it can't be changed. Right? Those are the 4 pillars. You change one of those, you walk away from Judaism, and you will no longer look Jewish, and your children will no longer be Jewish. And that historically we have seen happen. So, the only movement that has changed almost all 4 pillars, and even to some extent, belief in God maybe, is the Reform movement. Tragic. It's sad. Got to bring it back. That's what I'm just saying. As Jews, people talk a lot today about survival of the Jewish people. I'm not worried about the survival of the Jewish people. You know why? Because we have a promise from God that we're going to survive. We have a promise from God that we're an eternal nation. What I am worried about is that individual Jews should be with us. As we say, the bus is going to make it. The bus is going to arrive when Mashiach is going to be here. The Jewish nation is going to get there. The question is going to be who's going to be on the bus. And God obviously wants all of His children to be on that bus. And therefore, it's incumbent on all of us to try to help other Jews and reach out to them. Okay, but let's keep moving. Now, so we understand that there is not a religion in the world or a people in the world that's denied our claim that God gave the Torah at Har Sinai. Everyone agrees with that. And that's why as Jews, we're always looking back. We're always looking back to the previous generation, a generation that was closer to the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai. And that's why we respect our elders so much. And that's why we respect the previous generation so much. They tell a story about the famous Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, that one time he was on an airplane, and he was sitting next to a minister in the cabinet of Israel. And they were about the same age, probably the late 70s, maybe early 80s. And this minister in the cabinet of Israel was a secular Jew, and he noticed that the whole flight, that Rav Yaakov's grandson was very attentive to him, was serving him, and was taking care of him, and asking, do you want a drink? Can I get you a pillow? Can I do something for you? So this other, who was a minister in the cabinet in Israel, he turned to him and said, listen, how is it that your grandson has so much respect for you? Is so mechabed you, gives you so much honor. My grandchildren don't want to have anything to do with me. So Rav Yaakov said to him, Yaakov Kamenetsky, he said, look, it's very simple. The reason my grandchildren respect me so much is they know that I'm 2 generations closer to the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai. And therefore the wisdom I have is greater and purer. You, of course, your grandchildren look at you and they say, you're 2 generations closer to the monkey, so why should I respect you? We're always looking back. We don't see the previous generation as being inferior. We see the previous generation as being superior. Why? Because they're closer to the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai. Anybody here is a doctor? Doctors here? No? Anybody in medicine? Who's in medicine? Doctor? Where? Doctor? You doctor? What's that?
Pharmacist.
Pharmacist. Okay. Let me ask, what's your first name? Shalom. Was there a professor in college who had a particular influence on you in your development as a professional?
Yeah.
What was his name? Where'd you go to college? Where'd you school?
Long Island University.
No, University. What was the professor's name?
Like a jam.
What?
Dr. Plakajan.
No, Dr. Plakajan. Beautiful. I'm sure it was a wonderful. He was a wonderful professor. She was. She was. I'm sure she was a wonderful professor. Shalom. Question. Who was her professor?
I don't know.
Don't know. Okay. Anybody here in science? Anybody here? Your science. What type of science do you have? What? Oh, pre-med. Beautiful. Okay, doctor. Where do you go to school? Queen's College. Is there a professor there who has a particular influence on your desire to be a doctor and in shaping you? What's his name or her name?
Ruzeki.
Was it?
Professor
Ruzeki. Good, beautiful. Who was Professor Ruzeki's professor?
I don't think he knows.
But he doesn't know. Anybody? What other professions do we have? Anybody in business? Business school? Business school. Oh, good, beautiful. At Baruch? No, at St. John's. St. John's. Who was Professor St. John's had a particular influence on you?
Tesher.
Who?
Tesher.
Tesher. Dr. Tesher?
Yeah.
That's Tesher. Who was Dr. Tesher's professor? Now, I want to tell you something. I studied for over 14 years at Yeshivat Chavetz Chaim. It used to be in Forest Hills, now it's in Kew Garden Hills. My Rebbe, Zatzal, was the great Rosh Yeshiva Rav Hennek Leibovitz. I studied with him for over 14 years. His Rebbe was his father of David Leibovitz. His Rebbe was the Alter Mei Slobodka. His Rebbe was the Alter Mei Kelm. His Rebbe was Rav Yisrael Salanter. His Rebbe was Rav Zundel Misalant. His Rebbe was Chaim Volozhin. His Rebbe was the Vilna Gaon. His Rebbe was the Chai Adam. His Rebbe was the Marsham. His Rebbe was the Marsha. His Rebbe was the Rashba. His Rebbe was the Rashbam. His Rebbe was the Ran. His Rebbe was the Bali Tosfos. The Rebbe was Rashi. I'm right at the year 1000 right now.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Do you hear our transmission? We look back. How are we connected to the previous generation? How connected are we? Because we're trying to get ourselves back to the point at Har Sinai, where there was a revelation in front of 3 million witnesses. Okay. Question?
Do we have a particular location of the mountain?
It seems that we don't know the exact location. No, there are some places they think yes, no. It's more of a Christian tradition than our tradition. It seems like Hashem does not want us to know the exact location, because the exact location isn't important. What's important is what happened. Okay, now here we go, everybody. You know, a document came into the world called the Torah. What we call the 5 books of Moses. There's really only 2 possibilities. Either the claim that we have that there were 3 million witnesses who received God's Torah is true, or that it was made up. Those are the 2 possibilities. Either it happened, and it's true, God spoke to 3 million Jews, and we transmitted that information down accurately for the last 3,318 years, or it was a lie. It was made up. There's a very famous sefer written about 1,000 years ago, book called the Kuzari, in which he has sort of an imaginary debate with the king of Khazar. There was a country in which the entire nation wanted to convert to Judaism, called Khazar. So he speaks to this king of Khazar, and it's like imaginary dialogue, proving why Judaism is the true religion. One of the arguments that he uses is a very famous argument. And the argument goes like this. He says, either God gave the Torah in front of 3 million Jews, and that's true, or the whole story was made up. So he says, let me work like this. Let's try to disprove position B. Let's try to disprove, if we can, that it was made up. And this is how the argument reads. The argument reads like this. Listen carefully. He says, let E stand for event. Let E be an event which, had it really occurred, would have left behind enormous, easily available evidence of its occurrence. Let's say that again. Let E be an event. And if that event really occurred, it would have left behind easily available and enormous evidence. Let's say the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai. If the giving of the Torah at Har Sinai had really occurred, it should have left behind easily available and enormous evidence. If you cannot find such evidence, people will not believe that the event took place. Let me say it again. Human nature is such that if you're trying to fool people and you claim something great happened, but you don't have the evidence to back it up, we've never seen a case in history where people will accept such a claim. Do you hear what I'm saying? Let E be an event which, if it really occurred, would have left behind enormous, easily available evidence of its occurrence. If the evidence does not exist, people will not believe that E occurred. Okay? Which means that, what do you have to do to fool people? There's a certain assumption in the world that people are not stupid. And you cannot fool people so much. You can fool people a little bit. But you can't make a huge claim about something and not have the evidence to back it up. And if you don't have that evidence, people are not gullible enough to accept it. Therefore, you have to work the other way, of course. That if you have such a claim, given the Torah at Har Sinai, and you have the whole world, never anyone doubting that it existed, it must be there's enough evidence to support it. But let's just analyze this for a moment. You know, if you think about it, people are gullible a little bit, aren't they? You can fool people if you want. For example, you know, back in the Middle Ages in England, they believed in dragons, didn't they? They believed in dragons. These monsters that breathed fire, right? You know, Harry Potter talks about it a lot, right? You know? And they believed in dragons. So, if they believed in dragons, we see that people are gullible. You can fool people, can't you? How did you fool them to believe in dragons? But let me tell you something. Anyone who believed in a dragon always believes it because of the following type of story. For example, you have this knight, Sir Galahad. He's riding in the forest, and all of a sudden he sees a dragon come out of the cave, and he takes his lance, and he spears the dragon, and he's a big hero, and he comes back and he tells people what happened. You know what you never hear in folklore? You never hear that a dragon once marched down the streets of London and burnt down Buckingham Palace. Why don't you hear that? You know why? Because if an event like that, which is so big, and so many people should have known about it, and yet no one knows about it, nobody will accept that it occurred. That's to say, if you want to try to convince somebody about a very large event occurring, which there should be enough evidence to show that it happened, and yet there's no such evidence, people will not accept it as being true. You know, we see that about a lot of things in life. You know, going back, like, you know, Hitler, Yamach Shemo. You know, when Hitler came to power in 1933, so he wanted to say, you know, the reason why Germany lost the war in World War I was because of the Jews. But you know what he said? He said the Jews stabbed the Germans in the back. Now, if the average barber, I have nothing against barbers, another barber. If the average, you know, if the average, you know, the average man on the street, heard that, he would say, oh yeah, the Jews stabbed us in the back. You know, that makes sense. Like, you know, the Jews, we don't like the Jews, they must have stabbed us in the back. Never did Hitler say things like this. In the Russian front during World War I, the Jews laid in front of the tanks, tried to stop the German tanks, and that's why we lost the war. He never used that type of lie. You know why? Because that's not a lie you can get away with. Because even the German people would say, wait a minute, we fought in the German army during World War I. Jews never laid in front of tanks. We never saw such a thing. If you want to convince people that something happened, they're only going to be gullible up to a certain point. If you want to claim a huge event took place, that many people should have known about it, and no one knows about it, or that there should be a lot of evidence demonstrating that it happened, there's no evidence, people will not believe it. People will not believe it. Now it's interesting. That's what the Kuzari says. The Kuzari therefore says, you know, our claim that the Torah was given at Har Sinai is a claim that there were 3 million witnesses there. Now let's analyze that for a moment. That's a claim that if it were true, it's true. But if it were false, how did we get so many people to believe it? Would people be so gullible to say, oh, that's true? Well, let me ask my father, did that happen? Were you there? You know, at some point we didn't have the Torah, and at some point we do have the Torah. And you know what the Torah says? The Torah says, remember what happened to all of you when all of you stood at Har Sinai. Wouldn't somebody reading that Torah for the first time say, wait a minute, I didn't stand at Har Sinai. Who are you trying to fool? So maybe you're speaking to the next generation. Maybe this Torah came into history, and a few generations they said, you know what happened to your grandparents? You know, they all stood at Har Sinai. And so what do? You turn to your grandparents and say, well, did this happen? And your grandparents say, look, I don't remember such a thing happening. If you're going to make a massive claim, and you don't have the evidence to back it up, people are not gullible enough to accept it. That's a rule. And this is what the Torah says. The Torah is very confident in this. Because the Torah says in Deuteronomy, it says the following words. It starts speaking to the generation. It speaks to us. And it says, Kisha'amna liyamim rishonim. Please, Jews, if you have any questions about what took place, ask your fathers. Ask the previous generation. Ask them what happened. Go back in time. Ask them. How can the Torah make such a claim if it doesn't want us looking at the past? How can the Torah make such a claim if it's a lie? If we're trying to fool a people that something really happened that didn't? People aren't gullible enough to accept that. And yet the Torah says confidently, Kisha'alna, please ask. And you know what the Torah adds? The Torah adds a little piece of prophecy right there. It says that no other nation in history will ever make such a claim. That the entire Jewish people, that the entire people witnessed God speak to all of them. No other nation will ever make such a claim. That's prophecy. You know, think about it. You have to imagine like this. Imagine that Moses and Joshua are trying to fool the Jewish people. They're trying to pull the wool over their eyes. They're making it all up. Let's take possibility B over here. It wasn't true, it didn't really happen, but they're trying to fool the Jewish people that they all heard God speak to them. Okay? So really what happened was, you know, they got some fireworks and gunpowder, and they shot it over the mountain, and they had some sort of primitive electricity. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. You know, and everyone said, my gosh, it's God speaking. And they had these mushrooms in the desert, you know, and they were taking, and they were, you know, experiencing all sorts of psychedelic things, and the, you know, and now Joshua is going down the mountain with Moshe. And Joshua turns to Moshe and says, Moses, that was unbelievable. We really did it. We pulled it off. They really believed us. So Moses said, yeah, that was great. Unbelievable, huh? So he said, okay, Moses said, okay, Joshua, dictate. I'm going to write. I'm going to dictate and you write. So write, remember what happened to all of you when God spoke to all of you at the mountain of Sinai. So Joshua starts writing that. And if you have any questions, don't forget, ask the previous generation what they witnessed. They'll tell you. Now Joshua, write the following. No other religion will ever make the claim that God spoke to the entire nation. Now imagine what Joshua's response might be right there. Listen, Moshe, you're a very smart man. You were so smart you were able to hook up some primitive electricity over here. You were able to fool the whole Jewish people that God really spoke to them. And the Jewish people are very hard people to fool. We have a lot of enemies in the world, but no one says we're stupid. Right? Try to go to 47th Street. Try selling a diamond. That's not real to a Jew over there. You're not going to get far. People don't like us for a lot of reasons, but they admire us. They do realize that over 50% of Nobel Prizes have been received by Jews. That's a pretty phenomenal statistic, because in the world population, you know what we are?
0.0001.
We're about 0.04%. If you round this, if you round this off to the nearest, to the nearest integer, it's 0. Statistically, we don't exist, and we have more than 50% of the Nobel Prizes. No one denies we have brains. They don't like us. They know we're smart. So here so Joshua turns to Moses and says, listen, Moses, you were so bright, you were so brilliant. You were able to fool the whole people that was really God speaking to them. But Moses, you're smart enough to know, aren't you, that if you can get away with it, won't there be somebody or some religion in the next 3,000 years that might make the same claim? They'll also try the same trick? Maybe we should leave that line out. Very interesting, huh? It's prophecy. God tells Moshe to write. No other nation will make that claim. You know why? Because, as the Kuzari is telling us, you can't make a claim that you experience something unless you experience something. People are not that gullible. People will say, I cannot accept that because you're telling me my experience. And the next generation won't accept it because they'll ask their parents and say, did it happen? And the parents say, no, it didn't happen. People will not accept such a claim. We've never seen a case in history where a great event has been claimed to happen and there's been no evidence of it, and people have accepted it. We've never seen such a thing. What we have seen is when great events supposedly happened, and there is evidence that people accepted it. That's what we've seen. So God is writing a little bit of prophecy, saying no other nation will ever dare make that claim because they can't, and they haven't. And not only that, they all agree to our claim. Now it's interesting. Some biblical critics claim that actually the Torah was written by Ezra about 1,000 years ago. They claim. Well, actually, it couldn't have been more than 1,000 years ago. Sorry. I mean, we know that the Torah has to be at least 2,400 years old because Ptolemy of Greece translated, had 70 rabbis translate into Greek. But some say that it was actually written by Ezra a short time before that. Which is interesting because even when the Greeks were translating it, they claimed that they were translating an ancient document, an old document, at least 1,000 years old. But some say it was Ezra. So here comes Ezra, comes out with this document with the Torah. And they say to him, Ezra, what have you been doing? I've been in my basement. I've been writing a Torah. Here it is. It's a beautiful work of ethics and morality and life. Let me read it to the Jewish people. Remember what happened to all of you when all of you stood at Har Sinai. Ezra, not so fast. Listen, we weren't there. I don't mean you. I mean your parents. Parents? Okay, let me ask my parents. Were you there? We weren't there. No, not them. I mean your great-great-great-great-grandparents. Ezra, how come we have no memory of this? We forgot it. People forget things. Then you start reading the document a little further. You turn to Deuteronomy 31:21. And what do you find? You find the following words. Lo yamushu mipicha liolam. The words in this Torah, the event of Har Sinai will never be forgotten forever. Forever. It will never be forgotten forever. Ezra, why did you write those words if we've forgotten it? Interesting. The confidence of the author of this document knows it will never be forgotten because it happened. That's what we have over here. We have evidence. We have evidence. We have evidence, 3 million witnesses to the event. You can't make a claim like that unless it happened. I can't claim something miraculous happened. And you will not believe such a miraculous event unless you can verify it. And we have never seen a case in history where miraculous events have been claimed and people have believed it unless there has been verifiable information. People will not be so gullible. They'll believe in dragons, but only because Sir Gal had told them what happened in the mountains. You'll never hear a claim that a dragon went down into London, because people don't believe things that they can't verify. Hear how it works? That's what we have. That's our Torah. Now, in order for people to believe the claim that God gave the Torah at Har Sinai, there has to be verifiable information that it really happened. So obviously the Torah is speaking to the people themselves. Remember what happened to all of you. Remember the going out of Egypt. Never forget how God gave you the Torah. It tells the next generation, right? Ask your parents. Explain what happened. Question, my friends, and here's my question. We are now 3,318 years, approximately, from the giving of Torah at Har Sinai. Do we have the evidence today that that event took place? Do we have enough evidence in our own lives that we can commit ourselves to God fully? Do you and I have that evidence today? Do we have evidence? Now remember, I don't want, it's not faith. Judaism believes in something called da'as, knowledge. Do we have enough information that we can make an intellectual decision, not an emotional decision, an intellectual decision that the event really took place? Do we have enough information today? Jacob's a little shaky, I'm not so sure, right? Because without that information today, can we really feel that it happened then? Granted, the claim is miraculous, the claim is amazing. You can't claim the whole people experience something, it's experienced it, and that's the claim. We claim it says in the Torah will never be forgotten, no nation will ever dare make it. It says all that. But I want to see in your own lives, in my life, do we have the information that we can commit ourselves to it? Okay, this I want to do with you right now. Switch tracks with me just for a moment, and we'll come back and you'll see something very beautiful. Does everybody believe that 65 years ago there was an event called the Holocaust?
Mm-hmm.
We believe in it?
Some people forgot it.
Why do we believe it?
Into the museum.
Because why? Isn't it?
There's people who still exist.
Still people exist. We're survivors. Yeah, we have today. We have a few 100,000 survivors. They're becoming less and less each year, by the way. Would you be surprised if I told you that beginning even 20 years after the event, there were already people who were denying that 6 million Jews were killed?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that today there are many people around the world who are denying the Holocaust? Would that surprise you?
It does.
You know, if you go on the web, you can see whole websites about such people. I'll read you a few. It says, Austin J. App, former associate professor of English at the Salle College, Philadelphia, is the author of numerous neo-Nazi pamphlets. Did 6 million really die? The truth at last. Interesting, he's a professor. Or how about this guy, Arthur Butts, professor of engineering at Northwestern University. The hoax of the 20th century, denying the death camps and the extermination of millions of Jews, claims the fabrications of the Holocaust of Jews seeking to enlist support for Israel by appealing to popular guilt feelings. When was the State of Israel established? 1948. 1948. When did the Holocaust end?
1945.
1945. Is it true that it was the feelings of guilt in the world that allowed the Jewish people to establish a state after 2,000 years? Do you think if we tried to establish a state today, we'd get anywhere? Do you think the UN would grant us a state today? Definitely because of the guilt that was feeling, the remorse of what happened. So you know what they claimed? They claimed that the Holocaust was a Jewish invention in order to elicit sympathy for the state of Israel. That's what they claim. Or how about this one over here? Robert Farrison holds a PhD from the Sorbonne in Paris. He was dismissed from his position as professor of French at Lyon University for revisionist views and convicted by a French court for defaming the victims of the Holocaust. He claims that the Nazi gas chambers never existed and that facts about the Holocaust and the number of victims has been grossly exaggerated. These are professors, by the way. These are professors. There's a lot of revisionism out there. I don't believe it. And this is only 65 years after the event. And these guys started 30 years ago. It's nothing new. Let me ask you a question. Is it important that we keep the memory of the Holocaust alive? Yeah, I think it's important. It's very important. For many reasons. Right? Many reasons. We have to understand that just because you have a PhD and you have culture, that doesn't mean you have morality. You know, these Germans, Goering had 5 PhDs. Education doesn't make you moral. We have to understand how low a people can be. We have to understand that a human being has an neshama and every person is created in the image of God. You have to know that. We got to keep it's essential. It's imperative that we keep the memory alive. Question. Let me ask everybody a question. If we want to keep the memory of the Holocaust alive, if we want people 200 years from now to know that this event occurred, what do you think we should do? What do you think we should do? We want the event of the Holocaust to be known 200 years from now.
Make another museum.
Museum, for example, like the museum in Washington.
Washington's the biggest one.
Biggest, very beautiful museum, and I believe it's very, very, very powerful. Good idea. Other suggestions?
Pass it down to generations.
Pass it down to generations. Talk about it. Speak about it. Books about it. Good ideas.
Geneva Convention.
Study the Geneva Convention. Movies. Did you know that in the State Department, they have in the files of the State Department, I've heard there's something over like 3 tons of paper documentation where the Germans themselves documented the destruction of European Jewry. They have in the State Department. And yet we have revisionists. We have people deny it. Did anybody see Schindler's List?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is Schindler's List, do you think, good evidence that the Holocaust happened, or do you think it's not good evidence?
Well, it just gives you one point of view, one person.
Who was the director and producer? Who comprises the Dream Team in Hollywood? Do you know their names? I forget their names also. But Spielberg is one of them, and they're all Jews. Let me ask you a question. When I was growing up, we used to have an expression that says, the camera never lies. Nowadays, my 8-year-old can do things on Photoshop which can distort and make anything look like anything. Is the camera today a verifier of truth?
Definitely.
Or is the camera today perhaps an instrument of deception? You know, is it possible that Jewish producers in Hollywood could not produce films in which you have images of death camps and dead people and make the films look very old and very convincing? Is that not possible?
Yes.
Could it be that all of the evidence that is apparently in the State Department verifying the destruction of 6 million Jews was actually forged by Jews? Everybody knows that the Jews are the richest people on the planet, which is true. You know, for our size, we happen to have a very big part of the gross wealth of the world. Is it possible that the Jews, of course, did not buy off these people to claim that they were actually victims or to claim that they were perpetrators? Is it not, that's what their vision is claimed. These are my arguments. Is it not possible the Jews all did this? Why? Because they wanted to establish a Jewish state of Israel, and therefore needed guilt feelings in the world, and therefore feelings of popular support. That's what they claim. That's their argument. It's not my argument. It's their argument. They claim all the evidence that you just said. A beautiful museum in Washington. You know what they claim? They claim, who was it? Tell me what money built it? Jewish money. It's the Jewish lie. Part of the Jewish lie. In order to keep the state of Israel around, they have to always remember that there's a Holocaust. So it's part of the Jewish lie. It works hand in hand. That's what they claim. That's not my argument. That's their argument. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Remember 9/11?
True. But I'm saying, do you hear what's the problem? 200 years from now, how could you actually convince anybody that the Holocaust existed? It's very interesting that this problem, even going back, there's a very famous Holocaust writer, Lucy Davidowitz. So one time she was interviewed on Israeli radio, and it says, she wrote the following. She said, "We're writing this article, a young man who works on a radio in North America approached me and asked me if I was willing to debate Robert Farrison." He was one of the Holocaust deniers. "When I replied angrily that it would be a travesty of justice and decency to give such a man a public platform, the young man answered, 'Why are you opposed to dealing with a problem which is up for debate?' I asked him if in his opinion the murder of European Jewry was included in the category of up for debate. Has it not been proven as historical fact?" I asked him. The man responded, "I wouldn't know you. I wasn't born. I'm only 30. I said, that's the attitude. It's a very serious thing. It's not a joke. So question, if we want 200 years from now, when all the survivors are dead, to believe that there was something called the destruction of European Jewry, and there was a crime against humanity, and we have to guard ourselves against such arrogance, and against looking at a human being as non-human, if we want to keep this memory alive, how are we going to do it? How are we going to do it? Do you hear the problem? Museums do not help. Movies do not help. Books do not help. Jewish forgeries, that's all they are. That's what they claim. That's what they claim. All to elicit support for the state of Israel. So I would suggest something to you. I have an idea. And this is my idea. This is an idea. Why don't we do the following? Let's gather together all of the survivors in the world. Right now, Baruch Hashem, we still have a few 100,000. My father-in-law is one of them. Let's gather them together. Let's bring them to Jerusalem. And we're going to sit down and we're going to ask each and every one their experience. What happened? And they're all going to record their experience. Tell us their experience. They're going to talk about the roundups in the middle of the night. They're going to talk about the cattle cars. You know, when you go to this Holocaust Museum in Washington, I went a couple times, I've taken students, the most powerful exhibit at the Holocaust Museum, in my feeling, is that cattle car. They have one of those cattle cars where the Jews have to travel, and you see how small it is. And 100 Jews packed into it for a 3-day journey in the cold or the heat with nothing to eat, the torture. So they'll record that event. They'll record how they arrived at Auschwitz. This Dr. Mengele would point to the left or the right, Yimach Shemo. The left meant you go to the gas chamber. The right meant you have a chance to live. My father-in-law tells a story. He was a little boy. He was 14. He was small. He said he doesn't know what happened, but as he was going through the selection, 2 people lifted him up. And he was sent, and they said, go to the right. To this day, he doesn't know how it happened. A miracle. He survived. Baruch Hashem. And then they'll describe the tortures. And they'll describe the hard labor. And they'll describe that smell of smoke and bodies burning. And anybody who was there has that smell in their nostrils for life. And you know what the truth of the matter is? Even the words they say can't really get it out. Because words can't get around these ideas. You know, I always ask my father all the time, I used to say to him, Dad, I want to know more. And he'd always just go back to the same stories. And I realized it's not because he doesn't want to say more. It's he can't say more. He can't get words around these horrors. Words can only do so much. But we'll try. Let's get some words out and we'll get the story down. And then we'll describe the liberation. The Russians came from the east, the Americans came from the west. And how Jews were then brought by special units from Israel, across mountains and across borders, taken on ships to Israel, and people built their lives and rebuilt their lives. And we'll make a scroll documenting the Holocaust. And you know what we'll do with the scroll? Once we record it, we're going to make a rule. It can never be changed. You can't subtract to it, nor can you add to it. This is the scroll of the Holocaust, all the events. Now, around that scroll, we're going to do something very interesting. We're going to form a club. It's going to be the Holocaust Survivors Club. Now, how do you become a member of this club? To be a member of the club, you have to be a son or a grandson or a daughter or a granddaughter or a great-granddaughter, great-grandson of somebody who went and experienced the Holocaust. And every member of this club will, at birth, have the tattoo number that was inscribed on the arm of their parent, grandparent, great-parent, inscribed on the arm, and they will have that under their sleeve for life. And when they have children, they will inscribe that same number. That number will be passed down. And we have certain rules in this club. You have to marry somebody from the club. You can't marry anybody outside the club. And in fact, nobody can join this club. Maybe some people, special people, people who really care. They could come into the club. But it's going to take a lot of work, a couple of years of work. And they have to commit themselves to what the club stands for in a very, very deep way. And you know what we're going to do in this club? We're going to take this scroll and we're going to divide it into, let's say, 54 parts. And once a week, let's say Saturday, for example, we'll dedicate ourselves to studying that portion of the scroll. And that day which we devote to studying that portion of the scroll, we're going to gather in our collective community center. And we're going to read that part of the scroll publicly. And then we're going to gather together at our houses, and we're going to have a meal. And at that meal, we're going to make discussion of that particular part of the scroll, the purpose of that meal. And we're going to speak to our children and talk to them about it. And then we're going to do some other things also in this club. We're going to have other rules. For example, every member of the club is going to be obligated, or let's say just the men, are going to be obligated to wear underneath their shirts a piece of the pajama, that their grandparents wore in Auschwitz. And they're going to have it underneath their shirts. They're going to put it there. And they're going to tuck it into their shirts. But they're going to know where that's there. Those striped pajamas. Just the men are going to have that commandment. And we're going to take a part of that scroll, maybe the most important part of that scroll. There's going to be part of the scroll that's going to say like this: Hear, O Holocaust survivors, thou shalt remember the Holocaust with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your financial means. You shall take these words of remembrance. You shall tie them upon your arms. You shall place them on your head. And in fact, we'll create boxes, black boxes. And we're going to put in those black boxes the words, you shall never forget the Holocaust. And every morning, there's going to be a commandment for every member of this club to get up in the morning. Just the men, maybe. Women are busy. Just the men will get up in the morning. And they'll take this box. And they'll tie that box on their arm to remember the Holocaust. And they'll place that box on their head to remember it cognitively, cerebrally. And with their arm, they'll remember it. I have to act in remembrance. I have to use my strength to remember it. Uksavtam, and you're going to write them. Write these words on the doorpost of your house. Every room in the house, every doorway, you're going to have a little box. And in that box, you're going to put these words. You shall remember the Holocaust, never forget. And every time you walk into a room, I will not forget. And this club in the morning, you're going to wake up, first thing you're going to say in the morning, hear, O Holocaust remembers, thou shalt remember. Before you lie down at night, you say the same thing. You know? Then we're going to have certain holidays in our club. One holiday we're going to have is going to be the holiday of the food that we ate in the concentration camps. You know, in the concentration camps, potato was the mainstay. Potatoes. Potato peels. Your life was in the hands of the guy who dished out the food. If he was generous and he was kind, he would try to dig down deep for you so you'd get a few potato peels. If he was cruel, he would just skim it off the top so you just got liquid. So you know what we're going to do? For 1 week, we're going to clear out our homes. And we're going to have a special week where for that week, in every meal, we eat potato peels. For the whole week. And you know what we're going to do during that week? The first night of that holiday is going to be a special event. We're going to gather together, families. And we're going to sit in front of each other with our parents, grandparents in the first generation, great-grandparent, maybe that person was even in one of the concentration camps. But we're going to do this every year. And we're going to have a whole service. We're going to take potato peel. This was the food that our fathers ate in Auschwitz. We're going to dip it in salt water. And we're going to eat it. And we're going to taste it. And we're going to discuss it and talk about it all through the night. And then we're going to have another holiday. It's going to be the holiday of what it felt like to sleep in these camps, the barracks. For 1 week, you have to leave your homes and you have to build a hut in your backyard or on your driveway or someplace like that. And you have to sleep there and eat there. You got to get out of your living room, get into that hut, feel what it was like to live in those barracks for 1 week. Then we're going to have another holiday. It's going to be a holiday that commemorates the beginning of the club. And that's going to be a holiday in which what? We're going to stay up all night and learn the scroll again. Learn it. And talk about it. And think about it. And you know what? This club is going to have so many rules. We mentioned you can't change anything. You can't add anything. This club is going to have special dietary laws. Special dietary laws that no one else has. Because this club is devoted to the memory of the Holocaust. And the memory of the Holocaust means you have to have sensitivity. You got to have a heart. You can't be cruel like the Nazis. So for example, we're not going to mix milk and meat. Because that's cruel. We're not going to take the meat of the baby and cook it in the milk of the mother. We're not going to do such a thing. That's cruel. This club has to work on compassion. So we have to make sure compassion rules the day. You know what we're going to do also? We set up a whole special school system. Members of this club do not go to public schools. Members of this club go to special schools for them. For example, the first half of the day they're going to study the scroll. The second half of the day maybe they'll study things they need for life. Mathematics, Shakespeare. But the first half of the day is going to be devoted to studying the scroll. And we're going to make the prime achievement of somebody in this club to be a teacher of that scroll. That's going to be the goal of every little boy, that he's going to grow up to be a teacher of the scroll. Question, everybody. If you see a people, a club, 200 years from now, who are living a lifestyle a lifestyle dedicated to the remembrance of an event. Is that enough evidence to say the event occurred? Look at ourselves, my friends. Is there anything that I said which is not exactly what we do as Jews? Mezuzah, tefillin, tzitzis, yeshiva, kashrus, Shabbos, Pesach, Sukkot, Shavuot. You can't change the Torah. You can't add to the Torah. You got to study the Torah. Shema Yisrael. And this is just a small sampling of what we do. If you see Jews, 3,318 years from the event, living a lifestyle that demonstrates the remembrance of an event, is that enough evidence to say that the event occurred? You know what the evidence that Har Sinai took place and that we had 3 million witnesses? It's not only the fact that we have 304,805 letters that never changed. It's not only the fact that scattered around the planet are Sifrei Torah the same. It's that we are all living a lifestyle testifying to the event. How did you convince that first generation not only to accept the event, but to take on a lifestyle that testifies to the event unless the event occurred? Remember what the Kuzari said? If an event occurred, people will not be stupid enough to believe it unless there is evidence that the event occurred. Not only did that generation believe it, they were willing to accept a lifestyle of obligation testifying to its truth. A lifestyle that is difficult. A lifestyle that says sometimes you have to give up a job not to work on Shabbos. A lifestyle that says that you can't eat anything you want to eat. A lifestyle that says you can't marry whoever you want to marry. A lifestyle that even in the Torah, there's no mention of Olam Haba. There's no mention in the Torah. It's all in the oral tradition. It's hidden. But we know it's there. We're not doing it for benefit. We're doing it because we know it's true. There is benefit, but we know it's true. How did you get a whole nation to accept? 200 years from now, if I see a member of this Holocaust club, will I not say the Holocaust took place? Absolutely. 3,318 years from Har Sinai, if I see a Jew living a lifestyle of Torah, will I not say that that event took place? Absolutely. Where's the evidence? You. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Right here. That's been the transmission of 3,318 years. Hey, my friends, you know, we're part of such an amazing transmission. We're so fortunate. Ashereinu Kol Yisrael. We're so fortunate to be part of this transmission, to have it, to have this truth, to have what was given to our people 3,318 years ago, you know. And it's been handed down to us. It's been handed to us from generation to generation to generation, like a baton being passed down. And here we are now, ready to accept it. It's being passed to us. What a beautiful, beautiful transmission. How fortunate we are. You know, they tell a story about 2 people, Harry and Sam. So, you know, Harry calls Sam up and he says, Sam, listen, I have a stock for you. I want you to invest. Sam says, listen, Harry, I don't like to invest. I'm nervous. You know, I don't like the market. Leave me out of it. Harry says, listen, Sam, I'm putting $10,000 into it. Do you want to invest? Sam says, look, I don't want to invest. I'm nervous. Harry says, okay, Sam, I'm investing. So Harry invests his $10,000. Next day, Sam is thinking, should I have invested? Do you ever have this feeling? You're in that stage in your life yet? Yeah, some of you. You look in the paper, you know. Look at that, the stock doubled. Harry now has $20,000. I have nothing. So next day you get a call from Harry. Calls Sam up, he says, Harry, listen. He says, Sam, listen, you know, I want you to put money on that stock. That stock is going to double again. I want you to, listen, it's not going to happen once, it's not going to happen twice. I don't want to do it. Next day, Sam opens up the paper, he's a little bit interested. The stock doubles again. Harry now is up $40,000. Harry calls Sam up. He says, listen, Sam, Sam, listen, I'm telling you, just put some money in. Put some money in. That stock is going to double again. He said, look, it happened twice. It's not going to happen again. I'm not interested. Don't call me. Next day, he can't help himself these days. He opens up the paper. Look, it doubled.
80.
Harry is up $80,000. Harry calls him up. And he hears, Harry's calling him up, and Sam's like, he doesn't want to pick up the phone. I don't want to pick up the phone. It's like he knows it's Harry. The other feeling you just know that, the person calling. I know he's calling me, but I can't invest now. The thing can't double again. It's going to crash. I can't do it. So, Harry's ringing. Then the answering machine goes off. Sam, I know you're in there. Sam, I know you're in there. Pick up the phone, Sam. I know you're home. Did that happen to you? I throw the phone. Okay, Harry. Yes. Hi, Harry. I'm sorry. I was making lunch. I was making a tuna fish sandwich. I couldn't get to the phone in time. You got to invest. Put money in that. I don't want to hear that. So he looks in the paper the next day. Doubles.
160.
Harry's up 160,000. Sam gets his mail. He looks at his bank account. His annuity came due. He's up 1386. A few dollars more. Guy's up $160,000. He calls him again. He says, "Listen, I want you to invest. Listen, I'm not investing. It's going to crash. It's enough already. Stop calling me." He said, "Please invest. Please invest." So I'm not going to do it. No, please. Next day looks. It doubles again. He's up. What's that?
320.
So I talk about money. You listen, right? So he's up $320,000. So now Harry pulls up in his Porsche to Sam's tenement, and he gets out of his Porsche. He says, "Listen, you have one more opportunity. I want you to invest. I want you to please invest. I can't invest. It's ridiculous. It's not going to happen again. It's not going to keep going on. Please." He doesn't do it. Next, he looks in the stock. It doubles. Sam's up now 640. Where am I? $640,000. Calls him again. One last chance. Please invest. Please. I can't do it. It's going to crash. Enough already. Stop calling me. Looks at the paper the next day. It doubles. He's up. Where am I? He's at $1.2 million. And Sam is looking at it. Doesn't know what to do. Harry comes over to his house, knocks on the door, and says, "Sam, let me in. I want to talk to you." Have a seat. Sits down at the table. Says, "Remember a few weeks ago, I was begging you to invest. I was urging you to invest. I knew you wouldn't invest. So I invested for you. I put my $10,000 into an account, and I made a special $10,000 account for you. You also have $1.2 million.
That's a friend.
Crazy.
My friends, the investment has been made for us. We're just here to receive what's been passed down to us. Our parents, grandparents, great-parents, great-great-grandparents, they've done the investment. We just have to pick it up. That's all. We're the bearers of the torch, as they say. We're the next rung on the ladder, the next change in the transmission. How fortunate we are to be part of the transmission. Thank you for listening, everybody. I enjoyed speaking to you. Have a wonderful week.